Once the gold standard of magical storytelling, Disney's Snow White was revered for its timeless charm. But in a shocking twist of fate, the studio's ambitious live-action remake spiraled into chaos, igniting a firestorm of controversy and financial ruin. The dark side of Disney, inside the remake that destroyed Snow White's legacy, pulls back the curtain to expose a tale of creative missteps, relentless public backlash, and a betrayal of the very magic that made the original iconic. Get ready to dive deep into the scandalous secrets and bitter fallout that transformed a beloved classic into one of Hollywood's most infamous disasters. From the outset, critics and insiders warned that the challenge of remaking Snow White extended far beyond the simple act of updating a story for modern audiences. It was, at its heart, about the careful stewardship of a cultural icon, a task that demanded reverence, precision, and a deep respect for the narrative's original essence. Those who knew the film's history understood that every alteration, every reimagined detail, had the potential to alienate the devoted fanbase that had grown up with the 1937 masterpiece. Yet, in a move that can only be described as an audacious miscalculation, Disney opted to ignore these well-meaning cautions. Every creative decision, from the adjustments made to the script to the choices of direction and visual effects, seemed to drift further away from the enchanting simplicity that once defined the classic. As production progressed, it became clear that the project was riddled with missteps at every turn. The creative team, perhaps in an effort to prove that modern sensibilities could breathe new life into an age-old tale, embarked on a path of radical reinterpretation. Iconic scenes were reworked and reimagined, and the familiar characters were altered in ways that failed to resonate with longtime fans. What might have been a respectful homage to a cherished story instead devolved into a series of poor decisions that compounded on one another. The film's narrative, once a straightforward journey into a world of wonder and hope, became overburdened with extraneous dialogue, a heavy dose of modern political commentary, and a slew of stylistic choices that only served to dilute its core message. Behind the scenes, production was anything but smooth. The process was marred by chaos. Reshoots became the norm, last-minute script changes were a constant source of stress, and conflicting creative visions clashed at every opportunity. Rather than operating as a well-oiled machine, the production descended into a state of disarray, with each new decision undermining the last. The film's disjointed execution was not merely a product of artistic experimentation gone awry. It was a palpable disconnect between Disney's lofty ambitions and the realities of crafting a narrative that could live up to the original's magic. When the film finally hit theaters, the outcome was as disastrous as the early warnings had predicted. Rather than reinvigorating a beloved classic, the remake became a box office bomb. Empty theaters, both domestically and internationally, served as a stark visual representation of the audience's rejection. It was not enough that the film failed to capture the hearts of viewers. It also became an economic disaster, a harsh indictment of a project that had strayed so far from its intended path. The financial ramifications were devastating. Disney had envisioned the remake as a global phenomenon, a film that would draw millions to theaters and rekindle the magic of fairy tales for a modern generation. Instead, the film sold only half the number of tickets anticipated, a catastrophic shortfall that sent shockwaves through the studio's financial projections. The empty seats in cinemas around the world were not merely a sign of poor ticket sales, they were a testament to a broader disconnect between Disney's creative strategy and the expectations of its audience. In today's digital age, where online reviews and ratings can make or break a film, the critical reception of the remake was nothing short of abysmal. Audiences and critics alike converged in their denunciation of the film, with ratings plummeting to a dismal 1.6 out of 10 on IMDb and a meager 20% on Rotten Tomatoes. These numbers were not just metrics, they were a reflection of deep-seated dissatisfaction, a public outcry against a project that had, in many ways, insulted the legacy of its source material. The film was universally lambasted as an insult to the original, a misguided experiment that had lost sight of the magic that once made Snow White timeless. Adding to the financial and critical woes were the astronomical production costs, with budgets estimated between $250 million and $300 million, a figure that swelled further due to multiple reshoots and an aggressive marketing campaign. The film was set on a collision course with financial ruin. When the revenue from ticket sales failed to cover these staggering expenses, Disney faced a catastrophic 70% financial loss. In an industry where blockbuster films have the power to redefine a studio's fortunes, this failure was not simply a setback, it was a monumental misstep with long-term repercussions on both Disney's financial stability and its creative direction. Amidst these fiscal and critical disasters, one of the most contentious decisions emerged from the realm of visual effects. Disney's decision to use CGI to recreate the dwarves, a staple element of the original Snow White, was intended to modernize the tale and infuse it with a fresh, digitally enhanced aesthetic. Instead, the execution of these CGI characters became one of the film's most glaring failures. Audiences were met with visuals that were widely described as nightmarish. Rather than evoking the warmth and humanity that characterized the original dwarves, the digital renderings came off as unappealing and sterile, a far cry from the endearing figures fans had grown up with. Perhaps even more controversial than the aesthetics was the decision to replace real little people with digital counterparts. This choice was not merely an artistic misstep, it was seen as a socially insensitive move that sidelined the talents of real individuals in favor of unconvincing digital effects. The decision sparked a class action lawsuit against Disney, highlighting issues of representation and respect. Activists, critics, and members of the affected community rallied in protest, arguing that the move was emblematic of a broader disregard for authenticity and ethical responsibility. The legal and ethical fallout from this decision underscored a fundamental question about the role of digital enhancements in storytelling. Can technology ever truly replace the human element without sacrificing integrity? Amid the creative and technical missteps, a deeper betrayal unfolded, a betrayal of Walt Disney's original vision. Walt Disney, the visionary behind the original Snow White, had famously expressed his wish that the film remain untouched by remakes and alterations. His desire was born from a profound respect for the story and the legacy of classic animation. Yet, in its pursuit of a modern relevance and commercial success, the current studio executives chose to ignore this founding principle. The decision to remake Snow White, coupled with extensive alterations to its core narrative, was seen by many as a direct affront to the very spirit of the original film. This betrayal of legacy was felt deeply by fans and critics alike, who saw in the remake a loss of authenticity and a dilution of the timeless magic that had defined the classic. The casting of the film further compounded the controversies. Rachel Zegler's appointment as Snow White was one of the most polarizing decisions of the entire project. From the moment her name was announced, debates swirled around whether she was the right choice to embody such an iconic character. Critics questioned her ability to capture the essence of Snow White, noting that her youthful exuberance and unconventional approach to acting diverged significantly from the traditional portrayal. More than just a matter of talent, the controversy centered on her vision for the character. Zegler was adamant about reimagining Snow White for a modern audience, a vision that included radical changes to the character's motivations and relationships. In her reinterpretation, Snow White would no longer be defined by a passive longing for true love. Instead, she would be a figure of leadership and self-determination. This bold redefinition extended even to the portrayal of the character's romantic interest, with Zegler controversially labeling the original Prince Charming as a stalker. These departures from the classic narrative not only shocked longtime fans, but also fueled a broader debate about the role of modern politics in remaking beloved stories. Behind the scenes, the casting controversy was mirrored by a toxic environment on set. Tensions between Zegler and her co-star became highly publicized, creating an atmosphere that was anything but conducive to creative collaboration. Reports of heated exchanges and public disputes painted a picture of a production in disarray. As rumors swirled and personal conflicts became fodder for the media, the film's internal chaos became yet another symptom of its overall failure. The disputes extended beyond creative disagreements to include contentious contractual negotiations and demands that were widely seen as emblematic of a broader disconnect between traditional filmmaking values and a modern, hypercritical approach to celebrity. Zegler's rise to prominence added another layer of complexity to the unfolding drama. Having burst onto the scene at just 16 years old with a breakthrough role in Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, she had quickly become a household name, celebrated for her talent and buoyed by a rapid ascent to stardom. However, her meteoric rise also attracted intense scrutiny and controversy. Accusations of nepotism and claims of being an industry plant emerged, casting shadows over her accomplishments. Every facet of her career was dissected by critics and fans alike, and her outspoken nature, particularly her willingness to engage in politically charged commentary, only served to amplify the polarizing effect. In this charged atmosphere, every misstep was magnified, setting the stage for the tumult that would later engulf the Snow White project. Social media, with its unrelenting amplification of every word and action, played a significant role in shaping the public narrative. A single tweet could spark a firestorm of controversy, and for Ziegler, this was all too familiar. Her bold declarations online, including her proud assertion of her identity as Snow White and her confrontations over criticisms regarding her appearance, became lightning rods for debate. One particularly contentious tweet, later deleted, became a focal point for further negativity, underscoring the perilous intersection of celebrity, politics, and social media in the modern era. The film's narrative itself underwent radical alterations in an attempt to modernize its timeless story. Ziegler championed a version of Snow White that redefined the classic tale for a contemporary audience, a version in which Snow White was not a passive dreamer waiting for rescue, but an assertive leader determined to forge her own destiny. This reimagining extended to the portrayal of relationships as well. The iconic romance was deconstructed, with the traditional Prince Charming recast in a far less flattering light. Instead of a gallant hero, he was depicted as a predatory figure, an interpretation that shocked many who had grown up with the original wholesome image. This dramatic shift in narrative tone and character dynamics alienated fans and left audiences feeling that the heart of the story had been lost amidst modern ideological debates. The backlash was swift and severe. What was meant to be a reimagining of a cherished classic turned into a battleground for cultural and political ideologies. The film, once revered for its innocence and wonder, became a symbol of how modern reinterpretations, when mishandled, can erode the very foundations of a timeless narrative. Audiences, already disappointed by the poor creative direction and the seemingly endless list of missteps, found themselves further alienated by what they perceived as an inauthentic and forced political agenda. Beyond the creative and narrative controversies, the production was plagued by real-world tensions and safety concerns. On set, the atmosphere was fraught with discord. The strained relationship between Ziegler and her co-star was not confined to private disputes. It spilled over into public view, with media outlets reporting on a toxic environment that undermined the film's production. The situation deteriorated to the point where one of the actors became the target of death threats, forcing Disney to intervene and implement heightened security measures. Such extreme responses were a clear indicator that the project had spiraled far beyond the realm of artistic misjudgment into the dangerous territory of real-world conflict and public relations nightmares. In an era where the lines between film, politics, and social media are increasingly blurred, the Snow White remake became a canvas for broader ideological battles. Ziegler's outspoken political statements, including a controversial Free Palestine remark during the film's trailer release, only deepened the divisions among audiences. Social media platforms became arenas for heated debates, with every tweet and post adding fuel to an already raging fire. The resulting polarization made it nearly impossible for the film to be evaluated solely on its artistic merits, as the controversies overshadowed every other aspect of the project. One of the most striking manifestations of the film's misdirected creativity was the reworking of its iconic elements. In a bid to modernize the tale, Disney made the contentious decision to replace the traditional seven dwarves with a group of CGI-created magical creatures. Intended as a progressive update reflecting contemporary cultural sensitivities, the new digital designs were widely derided. Leaked images revealed characters that many compared to unappealing medieval reenactors rather than the charming, endearing figures of the original. This misguided attempt at political correctness not only alienated fans, but also served as a stark reminder that some elements of a classic are best left untouched. The cumulative effect of all these missteps, creative overreach, narrative deconstruction, production chaos, controversial casting, and misguided visual effects culminated in a film that was not just a failure at the box office, but a catastrophic blow to Disney's reputation. The opening weekend numbers were a sobering confirmation of the disconnect between Disney's ambitions and the audience's expectations. With global ticket sales falling 50% short of projections and critical ratings plummeting to unprecedented lows, the film's financial losses reached a staggering 70%. Such a monumental failure sent shockwaves throughout the industry, forcing investors, critics, and fans alike to question the studio's judgment and creative direction. In the aftermath of the disaster, the lessons to be learned from the Snow White remake are both clear and profound. At its core, the film serves as a cautionary tale about the perils of tampering with beloved classics. It underscores the critical importance of respecting the original legacy, a legacy built on decades of cultural resonance and emotional investment by audiences. While innovation and modernization are essential in any creative endeavor, they must be balanced with a deep reverence for the source material. Ignoring this balance can lead to a rupture in the connection between a story and its audience, resulting in outcomes that are both artistically and financially devastating. Moreover, the film's failure highlights the immense power of public sentiment in the digital age. In a world where every misstep is amplified by social media, the backlash against the Snow White remake spread like wildfire, transforming individual criticisms into a collective outcry. The incident stands as a testament to the necessity of understanding and adapting to the cultural and political climates in which films are released. For studios like Disney, the risk of blending personal politics with entertainment is a lesson learned the hard way, a lesson that future projects would do well to heed. Ultimately, the disastrous live-action remake of Snow White is not just a story of a film gone wrong. It is a multifaceted cautionary tale, a vivid reminder that when the magic of a classic is compromised by modern miscalculations, the result is nothing short of a cinematic tragedy. As Disney grapples with the fallout, the legacy of this film will serve as a vital lesson for filmmakers everywhere. True enchantment lies in the delicate balance between innovation and tradition, and when that balance is lost, even the most iconic stories can fall prey to irreparable ruin.